The other day I came across a nice video about overpowered characters, referring to characters that we create in our writing. That got me thinking about the opposite of an overpowered character. What happens when we have an overpowered villain that drives the progress of our characters? We have to step up and boost our game to deal with said overpowered character. We've seen them before. We've seen the Sauron the Dark Lord, we've seen the Darth Vaders. Almost all of the good science fiction and fantasy and different stories that we have where we have the clash of good and evil is going to have a powerful opposing force. Obviously, we don't want to be running up against the army of the Spaceballs. That's not really going to be a fear and suspense inspiring villain. But if you have somebody who's at the core of an evil empire, chances are they're going to be powerful and scary. Sauron the Dark Lord in The Lord of the Rings was exceptionally scary. The shadow of that power loomed over everyone in the land. The Star Wars villain Darth Vader was so powerful that he could walk in and decimate pretty much anybody in the room because he had so much power that was above and beyond what a normal human could do. When you start the hero's journey and your opposition is so powerful and overwhelming, you as a character have to advance. You have to decide that you're going to be better than you were, because if you don't, you're going to fail and suffer egregiously. For the hobbits, the initial motivation was survival and the flight from the Shire. The servants of the Dark Lord, who were themselves exceptionally powerful undead, chased them from their home. They knew that if they failed in their quest, their home would be destroyed and overrun by the enemy's armies. So they were highly motivated to defend everything they knew. And being the normal people, the hobbits of the Shire didn't quite understand the threat, and they began to have their eyes opened towards the end. They began to understand that it was most likely a one-way trip, especially Frodo and Sam. As they opposed those massive armies arrayed against them, it was essential that they get better. They had to get harder, they had to get stronger, they had to learn their skills, hone their skills, they had to find equipment, they had to build and grow their characters, they had to demonstrate skills throughout the story. Lord of the Rings is very specific in who it follows a group of people and then maintains a perspective for the entire book. And then when you're catching up later, you're catching up like a bunch of friends at a tavern and you have a conversation explaining what you've been doing. It doesn't really jump around that I recall. The Steve Jackson movies were lambasted at the time because they jumped around, they didn't follow the script exactly. It moved perspectives and it added things. When Gandalf was bound by Saruman, I guess that would have been the second. When Gandalf was separated from everybody after he fell and he was imprisoned and stuff, he had to go back and explain where he was. Our innocent hobbits were shielded from a lot of the world by extremely powerful, well-experienced fighters like Gandalf, Gimli, Legolas, and Strider. As time went by, the hobbits began to learn and improve as they trained with Boromir and Strider. The more time they spent away from their homes, they began to slim down. They began to harden physically. They weren't the rotund, happy little balls of meat that they were when they left. They became hardened adventurers as they continued their trek. They got stronger, they got smarter, they got faster, they ate less. By the end of the story, they were capable young men who were part of a coalition opposing an extremely powerful opponent. Same thing in the Star Wars, where you've got Luke Skywalker starts out as an innocent farm kid, doesn't really understand what he's up against. He's got the rebellious streak in him. He wants to go and join his buddy who's already flying for the rebellion, just coming from the same kid who said that he wanted to join the academy, and the academy that puts you into the service of the Empire. Luke didn't really understand what he was getting himself into. As his youth got chipped away through the first movie, by the time the second movie rolled around, the real movies, 4, 5, and 6, by the time he was stuck on Hoth, Luke was a 4, 5-year in service to the rebellion veteran. He wasn't the young, dumb kid who left the farm. He knew what he was doing. And that wasn't explicitly stated, but over time, the character became more serious until ultimately, third movie, he's wearing the black of the Jedi and he's mourning what he knows he has to do as he's becoming a comparable power to Darth Vader, comparable enough to oppose his father. In the second movie, he thought he was trained, but he still got blown out. By the third movie, Luke got paired up in opposition against Vader in the presence of the Emperor, who is also exceptionally powerful. The two contested evenly, Luke got ahead because he touched the dark side and the rage and the power that brought to his combats. He defeats Vader in the final confrontation, and then he has to deal with the Emperor. So you have a situation where the farm kid who started out only a few years before was interested in going to the Imperial Academy so he could learn how to fly and then potentially oppose the Empire later, wound up getting thrust into the rebellion, and then he grew his character until he had passed through his Jedi training, opposed Vader and Lando's Cloud City on Bespin, and then eventually they come up against how do we oppose the Emperor and Vader on their new Death Star. Ultimately, Luke is at a comparable power level to Vader. By using a very powerful, intimidating villain and explaining how that villain is powerful, showing how powerful that opponent is, that overpowered opponent, forces your character to grow and evolve. Years ago, one of the Dungeons and Dragons villains that I remember from one particular campaign, the villain was vastly more powerful than our characters, but because the villain was of the evil persuasion, didn't want to have other powerful people on their team, because other powerful people on their team means that the other powerful people on their team could become their opposition. So by that campaign, the villain had a bunch of trash defenders who worked together, but then you could oppose the villain because you had a good qualified team to oppose the villain, even though the villain was exceptionally high level in the game. But because you could use teamwork, and that villain, through their own ego, their own evil bent, where I'm in charge, I have to character development to where I can't allow others to challenge my power because I am evil. You could use your teamwork to out damage and defeat that much higher level opponent. And it was like a mid-tier campaign, I think it was. Your characters don't necessarily have to be individually more powerful than your overpowered villain, but it helps that your characters have grown and reached a qualified level. Then you can demonstrate the character development between your team, your light side team, your heroic team, or if you're doing an anti-hero kind of story, your chaotic good Deadpool kind of character who opposes the evil enemy who just wants to destroy the world. Your team of protagonists might oppose that extremely powerful, overpowered character, and working together using teamwork ultimately defeat them. That's a really good way to develop our story, develop our characters, show the teamwork, show how positively our folks have advanced and worked together. You can ultimately use a lot of positive messages in your story. A lot of heroic messages will help you describe your characters. It will show their character during their interactions. So you'll have a very cool story showing how much your characters have advanced in relation to that Dark Lord who opposes them, because it was the 9 that left Rivendell. And granted, the only guy who had been to Mount Doom decided to not go on the trip. Elrond. Your 9 leave Rivendell, and they're opposed by Dark Tower of Sauron. Saruman is lying, cheating, stealing his way through, causing problems, siding with the enemy. So our 9 have to work together and slip this way, slip that way, teamwork through difficult situations to defeat the minions of all those lords who oppose them and support Sauron the Dark Lord. And that shows the teamwork and the growth of our characters as we move through our story. By doing that, you are showing, not telling, that the teamwork is helping, because your team is working together to oppose the overpowered enemy. While creating an overpowered character as a protagonist to start is a perilous journey. If you start with an overpowered antagonist, the overpowered antagonist is causing all the problems worldwide because they've got the armies, because they've got the dark powers, because they've got the deal with the devil that put them in power, whatever system you use to create that overpower for the antagonist. That allows your protagonists to show off the positive sides of the hero's journey. They get to grow from the farm kids, the city kids who've come together to oppose oppression and show those heroic virtues. You can do all kinds of cool stuff with that. While you're exploring that journey, your characters will grow to meet the threat together. You've shown, not told, your heroic story. And that's a really cool way to tell your story. So go forth and conquer. Have a fun day writing your story.